Have you ever been told that your environment can stretch you or shrink you? I want you to know you are in the right place at the right time to be stretched into your dreams. And do you know that they've actually proven that when you get around people with like minded vision, your commitment goes up 80%? But they've also proven you should never share big dreams with small minds. Small minded people have the way of sucking the ambition right out of you, don't they? I want to share a story with you real fast, and most of you have heard this story, but there might be 8 or 9,000 of you who haven't. So, so this is a true story, but it's about a guy named Monty Roberts who grew up very poor. He grew up on the back of a truck. His dad was a horse trainer, and they lived in like a little camping trailer back there. And they would go from town to town training horses. And one day when Monty was about 6 years old, his teacher asked him to write a paper on what you want to be when you grow up. So Monty said he thought about it. He said, well, when I grow up, I want to race horses like my dad, but I'm going to race thoroughbred race horses. He said, I'm going to have a lot of money. I'm going to live in the valley. And he said he drew like a racetrack with little bunkhouses and tack rooms. He turned in his paper. The teacher graded it, and this is what it said. F, see me after class. Well, when Monty got the paper, he was devastated, and he asked his teacher, he said, why did I fail this paper? His teacher said, Monty, listen, you're a poor kid. You live on the back of a truck. She said, and you said you're going to have all this land in the valley. Do you know how much land cost? Can you imagine a teacher saying this? And then she said, this is an unrealistic dream for a kid like you. She said, go rewrite your paper, and I'll give you a better grade. Well, Monty said he went home, he shared it with his dad. He said, Dad, what do I do? His dad said, Monty, I can't tell you what to do, but whatever you decide, it's going to affect the rest of your life. So he said he went back the next day, he handed in the very same paper, and he told his teacher, you keep the F, I'm keeping my dream. Don't you love that? It's kind of like a take this job and shove it moment, you know? Which I don't recommend, but do you know that today Monty Roberts has that very paper framed in his mansion in California, where in 1 year alone he made $6 million. Don't share big dreams with small minds, right? Well, maybe you just got started in the business and you hoped it would grow a little faster. Or maybe you've been in the business for a while and you're motivated this weekend, but you've been motivated before and it didn't grow the way you wanted it to. Or maybe you just need somebody to give you some step-by-step instruction, maybe even elementary level. Maybe even someone who sounds like they're in elementary. That's where I come in, right? I'm just going to show you today how your entire life will grow when you get your ducks in a row, okay? So let me ask, how many of you have never heard me before? Wow. Okay, so the whole Coliseum? Well, I know what they're thinking, you know, that Legally Blonde's going to motivate us today. Yeah, I know, I don't look like a motivational speaker. I don't sound like one. I told Mia, she makes me sound like Joyce Meyer, but... but I just, you know, just to give you a little background, so God has done some amazing things in my life and in my ministry. I host a television show called Live Your Dreams. I've written 13 books now in 13 years. Our YouTube channel just went over 33 million views. Thank you, Jesus. I get to speak at the summit. But to appreciate all of that, you have to know the backstory. So real quick, I grew up in a strong Christian home. I was a cheerleader all through high school. I was the homecoming queen. I even dated the quarterback. But I was hiding so much pain behind a big smile. And nobody knew what I had been through. So just real quick, when I was 14 years old, I was raped by a guy at a fitness center. Never dreamed in a million years I would lose my virginity on a gym floor by a complete stranger who could care less about me. And I don't know if you've ever heard that statement that you behave in a manner consistent with how you see yourself. If you see yourself as worthless, you'll let people treat you like you're worthless. Well, after that happened to me, I got into a relationship with a guy that became abusive, and I stayed with him because of how bad I felt about myself. I thought I was the ugliest person in the world. I thought I was fat. I thought I was worthless. I felt so alone. And I stayed with this guy. He strangled me. He threw me in the ground on the dirt. He locked me in a car, banged my head on a steering wheel several times. And I stayed with him because of how bad I felt about myself. Finally got out of that relationship. My last semester of college, right before I graduated, I got pregnant before marriage. 3 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, I got married. 3 weeks after the wedding, I lost the baby. So everything about my life started feeling like just one big failure. And I just got into a rut. And it wasn't just like for 2 years. I just dove into an 11-year rut. And all of a sudden, one day in 2002, I just looked at my life. I'd been married for 11 years. My husband and I were separated. We were on the verge of a divorce. I was living paycheck to paycheck, had no money in my savings account, paying my credit cards every month, paying my car note every month. I had no vision for my life. My house was a mess. I was a mess. And I had a 5-year-old little girl looking to me for this role model. And I sort of looked into my future and I realized, unless I make a decision to change, this isn't going to be just like a season of regret. This is going to be a life of regret. And I did exactly what I'm going to share with you today, step by step, or duck by duck. And it took me from a woman on the verge of a divorce to a wife celebrating 31 years of marriage. Yay! To that same guy. He's back here somewhere. It took me from, someone with no dreams to hosting a TV show called Live Your Dreams. It took me from a girl raped on a gym floor feeling so ugly, worthless, and alone to a woman standing on a stage speaking to 20,000 entrepreneurs. I'm just going to show you real quick, not how you can go from an ugly duckling to, a beautiful swan. No, I'm going to show you how I went from an ugly duckling to a successful duck, okay? I'm just going to show you how your entire life will grow when you get your ducks in a row. So, y'all have heard that phrase, ducks in a row, and really what it means is how to organize your life so you're ready. Ready for what? Ready for the next level, ready for success. Alexander Graham Bell, he said, before anything else, preparation is the key to success. So if you're taking notes today, I have a little acronym for you, and it's based on what people will call you when you get your ducks lined up. You ready? Okay. The first duck starts with the letter L, and it stands for look where you want to go. Look where you want to go. If you're going to get your ducks in the row, you got to see down the road, right? Well, if you've ever heard me before, you know I'm passionate about you having a dream, right? And not only having a dream, but taking the time to write it down. Have you seen my giant pencil before? The Bible says to write the vision, make it plain. The Bible also says where there is no vision, the people perish. Perish means die. In other words, don't be a dead duck, right? But, I was thinking about how Jim Cathcart, he said most people aim at nothing in life and hit it with amazing accuracy. Well, not us. We're going to write the vision, right? So I want to give you 4 quick tips when it comes to having your dreams and goals. You ready? Number 1 is use your imagination. Everything begins on the inside before it ever shows up on the outside. Napoleon Hill's the one who said, if you do not see great riches in your imagination, you'll never see them in your bank ballots. Colin Wilson said, imagination should be used not to escape reality, but to create reality. Well, one of my favorite stories of using the imagination is told by Bob Bowman. He was the coach for the U.S. Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps. And I'm just going to hold him like that, okay? Did y'all warn your friends? But Bob Bowman, he said about Michael Phelps, he said Michael Phelps had amazing rituals and routines that led him to be so successful. He said, but what I admire the most about Michael was his ability to use his imagination. He said every day he would visualize his races daily and flawlessly. In fact, he said at the end of practice, his coach would tell him, Michael, before you go to bed, I want you to watch the videotape. As soon as you wake up in the morning, I want you to watch the videotape. But here's the thing, the videotape wasn't real. It was a mental visualization of him practicing his routine, his swims. He said he would imagine everything. He would imagine the strokes, the turns, the walls, the finish. Michael said he would even imagine scenarios like, what if my goggles break or my trunks tear? I don't want to go that far, but he would imagine everything. He said at practice, his coach would yell, put in the videotape, and Phelps would push himself as hard as he could. He said at competition, he would just come up behind him and whisper, get the videotape ready. Well, Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian in history, but he used his imagination, right? And I want to say thank you for letting me borrow these, Larry. So, he'll probably give me back, but anyway. Okay, so number one, it's so dark, I think he's laughing, but number one, use your imagination. Number two is you gotta write it down. Every successful person I've ever studied writes the vision, right? Don't just think it, ink it. Everyone from Michael Jackson did this, Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Ellen DeGeneres, Emma Stone, Jim Carrey, Steve Harvey. They write their dreams and goals, right? Don't leave them in your head, put pen to paper. Number three is you add pictures to your dreams. And the reason you add pictures is because your mind thinks in pictures. It doesn't think in words. So when you put a picture of your dream, what you're believing for, your subconscious mind thinks that's reality. And so it thinks nothing different than make it happen. It's been proven that we move towards what we consistently see. In fact, one of my favorite stories of someone using pictures is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And apparently a lot of people wear the Speedo, so. But Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was just a young teenager in Austria, he said he covered his bedroom wall with pictures of bodybuilders and boxers and wrestlers and strongmen. He said, I was creating an image of where I wanted my life to go, and then I lived into that image. Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger even said that his parents thought he was nuts. They thought he was crazy. They even hired a psychiatrist to come analyze him. Arnold said, be concerned if people don't think you're a little crazy, because you just might not be dreaming big enough, right? So add pictures to your dreams. And number four is you look at them daily. Do you know that this was proven in goal setting as the number one reason goals go unachieved is because they're out of sight? Out of sight, out of mind is a real thing. This is what they say. Keep your goals out of reach, but never out of sight. Why? Because you move towards what you consistently see. So what can you imagine? Can you imagine driving your dream car? If so, get a picture of it. Can you imagine driving up to your dream house? What's it look like? Get an image of it. Can you imagine logging into your bank account and seeing $10,000, $100,000 in your savings that you don't even need? Get a picture of a bank statement and put that number on there. Can you imagine walking the red carpet, coming up on this stage and telling your story because you're a new diamond and your story's gonna inspire others? Can you imagine it? Get a picture of Robin and Derek Kruger and chop their heads off and put your head on it and put it in your dream book. Do what you gotta do, right? So, you know, when I first started learning about this, I did exactly what I'm telling you when my life was such a mess. I went to a bookstore and I posed in front of a bookshelf acting like I'm a successful author. I hadn't even written a book when I did that. I Googled a picture of public school buildings and girls' homes, and I wrote in my dream book, I am helping hurting young girls make their dreams bigger than their memories. I didn't know how to do any of that. I just wrote the vision. I got a fake picture of me and John Maxwell, cut John out, cut me out, put it together, and I said, I speak at events with John Maxwell. I was barely speaking at events, much less with a hero. I got a picture of Joyce Meyer speaking to thousands of people. I chopped her head off, put my head on top, And I said, I am invited to speak at the largest churches and conferences in the world. You got to see it on the inside before it shows up on the outside, right? Okay, so your first duck is vision. Look where you want to go. Okay, the second duck is you got to unplug and get serious. Unplug and get serious. Now, what I mean by that, I heard Jim Rohn say that if you want to be successful, the first thing you got to do is get serious. You know, think about this. How much time do you seriously spend working on you? Like, how many books did you read this year? How much money did you invest in your personal growth? I just listened to this message, and it was a success coach who met with the Atlanta Falcons football team. I noticed there's no cheers because we're all Cowboys fans. Okay, good. Okay, sorry about that. But this success coach, he met with the Atlanta Falcons football team, and he told them exactly what I'm telling you. He said, you've got to put your dreams and goals in writing. Your chance of success increases by 44% when you just put pen to paper. So he said, I want you to write your goals right now. So they wrote down what they wanted. Well, then he said, I want you to hold them up right now. So they held them up, and he said, rip them into pieces, which I'm not telling you to say that. But he said, here's why. He said, how many teams in the NFL have the exact same dream that you do? To win a conference, to win a championship, to go to the Super Bowl. He said, every single player in the NFL has the exact same goals you do. He said, are the goals alone going to get you where you want to go? No, not by themselves. He said, now write down your commitments to achieve these goals. Now think about this. Years ago, when I first started learning, when I'm telling you my life was still a mess, I had a minister, Jesse Duplantis. He said to me, he said, Terry, stop looking at everything around you. Stop looking at Rodney's problems, because we were on the verge of a divorce. And Jesse told me 4 words. He said, you work on you. And then I heard Joyce Meyer say, God will change your circumstances. And I was like, oh, thank God. She said, but he'll change you first. Then I heard Jim Rohn say, if you want the future to change, you've got to change. I was like, why is everybody pointing at me? I mean, but then I heard where John Maxwell was asked, what is the #1 predictor of success? Now think about this. The #1 predictor that you will be successful. And without hesitating, John Maxwell said, be intentional about your personal growth. What could you accomplish if you were very intentional about the 9 core steps, about reading and listening and meeting with your mentors? You know, you've heard that phrase, if you want a remarkable life, you got to pay a remarkable price. Well, I had to learn to get committed in 3 areas. #1 was I had to commit to start reading. And I hated reading, like with a passion. I hadn't read a book since I graduated from college, except the L.U.C.K.Y cheerleader manual. That was it. But I hated reading. But then I read where 88% of the wealthiest people in the world read 30 minutes or more every day, and only 2% of poor people do. Then I heard T.D. Jakes make this statement. He said, anytime someone tells me I want to be successful, he said, great, take me to your house and show me your library. He said, you can't grow anymore if you don't read anymore. Of course, he's shouting and sweating when he says it, and it sounds more powerful. But, so I thought, okay, I got to commit to read. Well, then I read where successful people, #2, they commit to listening. 63% of the wealthiest people in the world use their drive time to listen to audios, and only 5% of poor people do. So I began to learn, okay, somebody said we put 12,000 miles a year on our car. That's the equivalent of 300 hours behind the wheel of your car that could change your life. So #1, commit to reading. #2, commit to listening. Then they said #3, commit to investing in your personal growth. So I remember the first time I went online and I bought $60 worth of books and audios. I put my credit card in and I was like, I cannot believe I just spent $60 on resources. Then I started thinking, I would easily spend that on clothing. This is my future we're talking about. Well, now, do you know the most valuable thing in my house? It's my books, my audios, my court. And don't get me wrong, I have some amazing shoes, but I'm just saying that the books are what taught me how to get the amazing shoes, right? So here's what I want you to know. Whoever has your ear has your life. Yes, it's an ear. I Googled it and found it. But whoever has your ear has your life. So you got to be very selective about who you allow to speak into your life. So, you need mentors who are 7 to 10 steps ahead of you. They say black belts don't learn new skills from white belts, right? Well, when you get an opportunity to be around a black belt, like Sajal and Mayat, Mike and Susan Bundy, Toby and Mia Ayers, Joe and Mary Beth Markowitz, Larry and Pam, all of you, when you get a chance to be around Brian and Karen McGrath, seize the moment. Be all ears, right? Because you're going to grow just by proximity. In fact, earlier this year, I had the opportunity to hang out with a black belt, Brian Tracy. Y'all know who Brian Tracy is? So I had the opportunity of going to his house, having dinner with him, and Brian Tracy talks about the 3% rule. Now, I've never heard this before, but he said to guarantee your lifelong success, make a decision to invest 3% of your income into your personal growth. He said, for example, if you make $50,000 a year, invest 3%. I'm going to grab my pocket calculator. Okay, 50,000 times 3%. Carry my 3. Okay, so that's $1,500 you need to invest in yourself. So Brian Tracy was talking about how years ago he was at a conference and this young guy came up to him, was about 30 years old, and he said, Brian, I heard about your tip of the 3%, and he said, when I first heard that, it was 10 years ago. He said, I had just dropped out of college. I was living at home with my parents. He said, I was driving an old beat-up car, and my salary was $20,000 a year as a salesman. He said, I heard you say to invest 3%, so I did the math. 20,000 times 3%. $600 is what he needed to invest in himself. He said, it was hard, but I thought, I'm going to test this thing. So he bought the books and the audios. He said by the end of the next year, his salary was $30,000. So he said, I'm going to do it again. So 30,000 times 3%. He said $900 he invested in his personal growth. By the end of that year, his salary went up to $50,000. So he thought, if my salary, my income will grow this much just by everything I'm learning, then I'm going to invest 5%. He invested 5% of $50,000, $2,500. He said, I hired a part-time coach. I flew across the country to different conferences. He said, by the end of the next year, my income was over $100,000. He said, when I got to $100,000, I said, well, I'm going to act like it's Texas Hold'em. I'm just going to go all in. And he said he invested 10% of $100,000. He said, I've been doing this year after year after year. Brian said, what's your income now? He said he smiled real big, and he said, I just went over $1 million. You'll never go broke investing in yourself, right? So I think we should just start with 3%, don't you? So all I'm saying is don't be a sitting duck. Make you and your growth a priority, right? Okay, you ready for the third duck? It starts with the letter C, and it stands for create a new schedule. Create a new schedule. You know, maybe you are busier than ever and you're not growing. Or maybe you struggle to find time for all these habits we're talking about. I completely understand. In fact, I remember when I first started learning all this, I was already stressed out with my schedule. Like, I would hear all this, but I would think, when? Like, when am I seriously going to sit and read or go to more conferences? And finally, I went to the bookstore and I bought one book on time management. And it sat in my nightstand for months because I could never find time to learn how to manage my time. Well, finally, I got desperate for change, and I began to hear stuff like, the average American watches 4 to 6 hours of TV a day. Just cut out 30 minutes. You can still watch your 5 hours and 30. Cut out 30 minutes and go somewhere and read. Or nowadays, the average person is on social media 144 minutes a day. That's 72 hours a month. That's the equivalent of 3 days of your month is just spent watching other people live their dreams. Then I began to hear stuff like, The average person oversleeps 30 minutes a day. And you might even think 30 minutes a day, Terri, it's not that big of a deal. But do you know that 30 minutes a day times 30 days in a month is 15 hours that could change your life or keep you stuck? So I made a decision. I started buying the books. I started setting my alarm 1 hour earlier to get up and invest in myself. And I remember something surprising began to happen. The more I read, the more I began to learn. The more I learned, the more I began to earn. As I began to grow, everything in my life began to grow. So we have time, we just have to locate the time, right? I found out that successful people know about a secret tool, and it's called a calendar. But here's the thing. Scheduling things on your calendar, it's not about getting more things done, it's about getting the right things done. So I want you to think about this. What do Larry Winters and Joe Markowitz have in common? Maybe they both wear Speedos. I don't know. I can't answer that question. But no, you know what they have in common? They both have the same 24 hours a day that we do. They just learn to manage their days instead of their days managing them, right? So I like the way Michael Hyatt explains it. He said, most people are either designing their life or they're drifting in life. And he said, if you don't start designing where you want your life to go, then you're going to drift in life. And he said, nobody who ever drifted in life ended up at a destination they would have chosen. You know, I think about just a personal story real quick. But years ago, some friends and I were vacationing in Maui. And some of you have been there and you know that they have Big Beach, but they also have Little Beach. Well, me and all my friends were laying out at Big Beach. And my friend Eddie wanted to go surfing. So he was surfing and his surfboard sort of drifted over towards Little Beach. Well, all of a sudden he's surfing and he looks at the guy next to him and he goes, dude, man, you lost your trunks. This guy was surfing naked. So then all of a sudden he looks around the beach. He's like, everybody lost their trunks. It was a naked beach. So you don't want to drift. You don't want to drift to naked beach. But you also, true story, you don't want to drift in life, right? So you got to start designing your days, your hours, your minutes. And here's the thing. Some people say, I live by my calendar. If it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. But we don't schedule our new habits on the calendar, and we wonder why we're not growing. Let me give you an example real quick. Some of you may run into some of your friends here at the summit, and y'all have seen each other for years, and you'll say, hey, let's get together. Call me sometime. Let's go have dinner. And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And then 6 months go by, and you see them again. And you're like, oh, my gosh, seriously, call me. I want to go out. And they're like, yes, you too. Text me. 4 months go by. You see them again. How many of you know it's never going to happen until one of you says, Friday night, 7 o'clock, mi cocina, right? It's the same with your habits. They're never going to happen until you say, Monday through Friday, 6 to 6:30, read. What gets scheduled gets done, right? Stephen Covey said, don't prioritize your schedule your priorities. Let me show you an example real quick. Most of you have probably heard of the Seinfeld strategy, right? The Seinfeld strategy, Jerry Seinfeld, one of the greatest comedians, he was at a comedy club one night, and he said that this young comedian came up to him and he said, Jerry, do you have any advice for a young comic to be successful? Jerry Seinfeld said, well, yeah, the way to be a better comic is to write better jokes. He said, but the way you write better jokes is you write every day. He said, here's what I want you to do. Go get a calendar. And he said, I want you to get a red magic marker. And every day that you keep your commitment with yourself to write a joke, you get to put a big X over that day. He said, pretty soon you're going to see a chain of X's. And he said, it's going to look really good when you get a few weeks under your belt. He said, your only goal is don't break the chain. He said, it doesn't matter if you're motivated or not. It doesn't matter if the jokes are any good. It doesn't even matter if you'll ever use these in a routine. He said, all that matters is don't break the chain. Well, in 1 year alone, Jerry Seinfeld made $267 million. So we got to look at our habits the same way, right? With reading and listening. Don't break the chain. What gets scheduled gets done. So I've only got 2 more ducks. Are y'all ready? Okay, and I'll go fast. So the next duck starts with the letter K, and this is what it stands for. Keep yourself motivated. What does that mean? Well, I found out you've got to become your own cheerleader if you're going to live your dreams. Stop looking to other people for validation. My friend Marshawn Daniels, she said, if you allow yourself to settle for less, nobody is obligated to stop you. You have to cheer yourself on. And you know, the reason it's so easy to get frustrated when things aren't growing the way you want is because sometimes you watch a 2-hour movie and you see people meet, fall in love, get married, have kids, start a business in 2 hours or less. Or you watch people, conquer the world, defeat avatars, slay dragons in the same amount of time it takes you to do some laundry. But you got to keep yourself motivated, and you got to stay focused and control the negative thoughts, because it's so easy to just start veering towards everything that's not happening in your business, in your life. In fact, I thought this was pretty fascinating, but in the Midwest, they did a research on Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. They just walked up to random people and they asked them, can you name Snow White's 7 dwarfs? Now, I thought this was interesting. Nobody could name all 7. But the 2 most popular were Grumpy and Dopey. Now, here's the interesting thing. Nobody remembered Happy. They spent $10 million on this research to prove what we already know, that we all tend to focus on the negative and what's not happening than the positive, right? But you have to become your own cheerleader. You know, Joyce Meyer says, if you think you can't succeed, you're defeated before you even get started. I know y'all have heard the illustration of ships, but I want you to think about this. They say that ships do not sink because of what's around them. They sink because of what gets in them. You can't let the negativity of others get down on the inside of you and cause you to sink and give up on your dream. No, you got to be your own cheerleader. In fact, I had to do this. In 2007, I made a list of positive declarations because I kept hearing all these negative voices. I remember someone said, Terry's going to have a ministry. Give me a break. Someone else said, good luck, as they laughed in my face. Plus, I had all the negative thoughts. So I went in my guest bedroom and I made a list of I ams. I said, I am confident. I am courageous. I am qualified by God. I am invited to speak at the largest churches and conferences in the world. Why? Because whatever you put after I am becomes your reality. If you want to know where your life is headed, listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth, right? So who do you need to become to achieve your dreams? Whatever it is, speak it out. Become your own cheerleader. Okay, are you ready for the final duck? I saved the best duck for the last. Okay, so this last duck starts with the letter Y, and it stands for you paddle harder than anyone else. Let me explain what I mean. You've heard that expression that success is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, right? I think it's amazing how ducks, just on the surface, they make it look so easy. Like they're just coasting along, everything's calm, nothing going on. But if we could see what's going on underwater, they're paddling like little ninjas, aren't they? The interesting thing is, the people who make it look effortless, they're the ones working the hardest behind the scenes. I think, I love this poem. I want y'all to hear this poem that I got from my pastor, Keith Craft. I want to read this to you real quick because I thought it was so good. It's called Choose Your Hard by Keith Craft. He said, being your best is hard. Being your normal is hard. Making wise decisions is hard. Making bad decisions is hard. Being in shape is hard. Being out of shape is hard. Losing weight is hard. Being fat is hard. Working out is hard. Being weak is hard. Being disciplined is hard. Being lazy is hard. Getting out of your comfort zone is hard. Staying in your comfort zone is hard. Starting a business is hard. Working for someone else is hard. Making a lot of money is hard. Making a little bit of money is hard. Being rich is hard. Being poor is hard. Having great relationships is hard. Having bad relationships is hard. Fighting for your marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. Having a lot of things is hard. Having nothing is hard. Living on purpose is hard. Living off purpose is hard. Doing life God's way is hard. Doing life your own way is hard. Everything is hard. Choose your heart. Isn't that good? So I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you to be willing to pay the price, to do more than the average duck is willing to do. You know, Peyton Manning was asked 25 years ago, they said, what are you going to do with all this money? You know what he said? I'm going to go out and earn it. I want you to know, every day that you get up and you read, you're earning success. Every day that you keep your commitment on the calendar, you're earning success. Every day that you look at your dreams and goals, you're getting closer to them. I want you to be the odd duck. Like Ed Milet says, something powerful happens when you start doing things that other people won't do. You start to believe you can have things that other people won't have. So I'll tell you this, and then I gotta go. So I heard Jim Rohn talk about the goose. I just happen to have one. And you know what? I got duck, duck, goose. Okay, so these are instrumental illustration techniques, Larry. These are not puppets. But I heard Jim Rohn talk about the goose. And he said the goose can only operate by two things, instinct and the genetic code. He said, for example, the goose flies south every winter. You ask how often? Every winter. Even if you told the goose, hey, it would be best if you went west this year. He ignores that advice because he can't make decisions on his own. He can only operate by two things, instinct and the genetic code. He said, here's the thing, not human beings. Human beings have this remarkable ability to live a certain way for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and then all of a sudden one day decide to tear up the script and live a completely different life. Jim Rohn said, here's the thing, you're not a goose. You can change your life anytime you decide to. So, to wrap up my own story, I told y'all how years ago I went through all this hell. I was raped, I was abused, pregnant before marriage, lost a baby, felt rejected, I've been betrayed, I've had skin cancer, insecure, felt ugly, felt worthless. But all of a sudden one day, I decided I'm not a goose. I can change my life anytime I decide to. And I did exactly what he said. I tore up the script and I decided to live a completely different life. And I did what I'm sharing with you today. The L, look where you want to go. I started getting a vision of myself doing things that looked utterly impossible. U, unplug and get serious. I started investing some of my money into my personal growth. C, create a new schedule. I started making myself get up 1 hour earlier to work on me. K, keep yourself motivated. When people laughed in my face, I said, I am confident, I am courageous, I am qualified by God. And then Y, you paddle harder than anyone else. I had to make a decision. I'm not going to compare my new habits, my new discipline, my new ambition with anybody around me, because I'm doing things other people won't do so I can have what other people won't have. Can I just show y'all a few of those dreams that I mentioned earlier? Here I am standing in front of a bookstore acting like a successful author. Here I am walking in Barnes & Noble and seeing my books on the shelf. Here I am Googling public school buildings and girls' homes. Here I am getting our courses in safe houses across America. Here we are, you know, the fake picture of me and John Maxwell. Here's a real picture speaking at events with John Maxwell. Here's that picture where I chopped off Joyce Meyer's head and put my head on top. But y'all, I don't even have to show you a picture. Just look around. I'm speaking at one of the largest conferences in the world, right? And you know what is so amazing? God is so amazing. It just dawned on me this week. This picture where I chopped off Joyce's head and put my head on top was in this very arena in St. Louis, Missouri. Isn't that amazing? Well, we move towards what we consistently see, right? So to wrap this up, if you're taking notes, my little acronym spells L-U-C-K-Y, lucky, because that's exactly what people are going to call you when you get your ducks in a row. People look at my life today and they'll say, wow, she's lucky. She's a lucky duck. And then they'll say, must be nice. Just smile, shake it off, like water off a duck's back, and just say, it is. Thank you, Jesus. And keep paddling, right? So, I just want to challenge you today and just remind you that your life, your business, your opportunities, your influence, your whole life will grow when you get your ducks in a row. I hope this inspires you today. I'd love to meet you at the book signing, and I'm going to duck out. God bless you. Thank you.